Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Talk with the Titans, live from London, UK, all the way to the US of A and worldwide. I'm your host, Kalam L, and this is Talk with the Titans. On tonight's show, we will be interviewing the Codex King himself, Shakka Ahmose. Oh my gosh! All right, I can't wait for this. I don't know if everybody's as excited as I am, but I am thrilled to have him on. We'll be delving into his personal life, asking him those hot on the lip questions. We'll be going into we'll be talking about his mentors, his inspirations. Why does he have this pet peeve with the religions of Islam and Christianity? Okay, so stay tuned. We're about to go in. But before we do that, I'm going to ask everybody to please just hit the subscribe button down below, or literally, where are we? Where is it? Is it right there? Right there. Just that button there, that subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button if you want to stay in tune with all our shows, okay? We've got so many Titans passing in the studio. Next week, we're going to be having a Kemet on trial weigh-in. So don't miss that out. We're going to have some Titans coming in through the studios, okay? If you want to stay in tune with all our past shows, Dr. Ali Muhammad, Asar, I'm Hotep, Jonathan Owens, the Amin Ra Squad, Divine Prospects, Zion Lex, Nazia Chevelle, just hit the subscribe button, go down and find the playlist of Talk with the Titans, hashtag Talk with the Titans, and you can stay up to date with our shows. All right, but without any further ado, let us bring in the champ himself, the Titan himself, Shakka Ahmose.
Hotep family, Hotep, I bet to everyone. Unfortunately, I didn't have the champ is here ready, but I really wanted to close my Facebook only because Facebook tends to run scripts, and when it runs scripts, it can sometimes interfere with my computer. So it'll create somewhat of a lag. And rather than subject the show to that, I would just prefer to humbly come in and first say dua, thank you to Kalam L and the show Talk with the Titans for having me. And that thank you goes, that deep thank you, the genuine thank you goes to all who are affiliated with the show and whom helped to make it happen. And I want to say a genuine thank you, a dua'u, praises, gratitude to all of you in the Medu language. Thank you very much for having me here.
Listen, it is a great privilege. It is an awesome, great, magnificent privilege to have you on in our studios, Saber Shakka Ahmose. Trust me on this. Okay, but before we're gonna you know what? Let me sit back because the excitement that's running through my body is too much. Before we actually go into our interview with Shakka Ahmose, we're gonna actually introduce our other panelists. Our other panelists who are here with us. But for those of you who are new to the show and are tuning in for the very first time, Talk with the Titans was birthed out of the idea that the intellectual giants, the titans of our community, should have a well-organized platform to present, discuss, and debate critical information affecting our community proposed by you, our audience members, the community, Team Titans, all the way. So anytime you want someone to come into the studios, just let me know and we'll get that person in. Any topics that you want to be debated or discussed, let me know and we'll make it happen. And that being said, the show is how can I say, it is sectioned up into 3 parts. The first section is dedicated to the Titans presenting the information of their choice. The second half of the show is dedicated to our panelist members, asking our Titans any questions, asking them any questions that they have pertaining to their interview or their presentation. And last but not least, we usually have an off-air section where we have debates. We have fiery debates of questions and answers and back and forth with the Titans themselves. So it's very, very, very interesting. And we're going to start to show them live. But for now, Let me introduce our panel members. On the panel today, we have a member of the Hebrew war machine, our brother Pa Nehisi. Shalom Aleichem, brother Pa Nehisi. Brother Pa Nehisi, let me know if you're ready to talk. Okay, next in the studio we have our sister, a beautiful sister that is so talented in the Medo Necha language. We have Necha Ma'at in the studios. Greetings, Necha Ma'at.
Imhotep, Uncle Jastaneb, how are you?
I am wonderful. Nefer, I'm beautiful. I'm feeling well. I'm so pleased to have you in the studios. You are literally one of our first female panelists. So I am pleased and I am happy to have you here.
Equer. I'm so sorry. I actually have my webcam on, but for some reason it's doing something crazy right now and I can't even get it to come on. I'm so sorry. Yeah, but I'm so honored to actually be here. I appreciate you having me on here. Wow.
Dwelling sister. And next we have all the way from the UK, my brother himself, DJ Gambler in the studio. DJ Gambler, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. And Brother Kalam, well done for putting this together. This is history in the making, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Duawu.
I'm glad to have you being a part of this as well. And I'm glad to have Shakka Ahmose in the studio. Shakka Ahmose, let me, you know what? Me and this brother has literally had about, close to about three hours worth of conversation within the last, I don't even know how long. But we've been going back and forth with each other, and it's been an absolute pleasure to actually, have you as someone I can call you a brother, a friend, as someone that I can talk to. So easy to talk to. We was literally spent about a whole 5-10 minutes just laughing. I think this was about 2-3 weeks ago. And we were just on the floor laughing with each other, and it was fun. So a lot of people don't know the real Shakka Ahmose. This is why this show is dedicated to him, and it's called The Man Behind the Screen. So we're gonna get to know about Shakka Ahmose today. Shakka.
Duawu. Kalam L again for having me, and again thank you to everyone for being here. And yes, we have enjoyed a number of back and forth dialogues over the past few weeks between you and myself, Kalam, and we did certainly enjoy some laughter and just some insightful conversation. And I am very, very grateful to know that there are sins out there like yourself, such as yourself. It makes a big difference for myself. I'm looking for you, but for some reason I can't see you, and I don't know why. Kalam?
Yeah. Oh, it's because the screen is on you right now. That's why the screen is.
Oh, because the screen is on me. Okay, the screen is on me right now. Okay, so when the screen is on me, as I'm looking, what is it that I should expect to see? I'm not sure. So put it back on me so I know what to see. What I'll be looking at when it's on me, and it won't throw me off.
All right. The screen is on you right now.
Okay, the screen is on me right now. Okay, it might have been my my Facebook script playing havoc with my computer. But again, I am grateful to be here. I'm very grateful to be here. And any questions that you have, I would say now is the time to let them rip. It doesn't matter if they're good questions or bad questions or controversial questions, even personal questions. I have no problem because I know a lot of people do have questions. But I think what's worse than the questions is a lot of people already have preconceived ideas and notions about myself, about who I am, about what I'm about, and about things that I may have said, or things that I have not said that other people may have put into my mouth. I'm not sure, but I'm sure such a thing can occur with anyone who speaks as often as I do. So please, we could just jump right into it. I don't want to waste the people's time. They didn't call to hear me filibuster and blah, 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 blah. You know, they can always come visit me at my home for that. So please, Kalam, by all means, let us commence with this interview.
All right. So you know what? I would like to find out about your Genesis story. Where did you begin? Because a lot of people saw your beginnings on Sana TV. That's where they first saw you. They first saw you coming out on a street debate, exploding, pushing everybody behind you and saying, Imam Bashir, and breaking down Islam. So that's where everybody first, I believe most people first saw you and heard you on the scene. But me personally, the first time I saw you was on Kemetic Legacy. So big up Kemetic Legacy out there doing their thing. I saw you a very astute, intelligent man sitting down, very composed. You know, it was a different Shakka Ahmose completely, just well composed, just answering questions eloquently, beautifully, coming up onto the stage, having that presence, doing your music, singing with such passion. So that's the first time I actually saw you. Then I saw you again on Sana TV, and I was like, hold on, check my YouTube histories. I was like, oh, okay, wow, imagine that. So, you know, so could you please let our audience know, you know, how did you get involved with the Nile Valley movement, the Nile Valley consciousness? You know, how did you get involved with that?
Okay, I want to say thank you again. A very genuine dua to you, Kalam, because you're very, very generous with your accolades and with your generosity. You're very generous with your generosity, and I appreciate that. It's a change. It's a different change of pace for myself in the conscious community because there's always so much confrontation. But with respect to the Nile Valley movement certainly began long before me. In fact, the Nile Valley movement began 5,000 to 10,000 years ago, and I like to consider this phase what a renaissance. No, let me use the Kemetic term. It's a Wemi Mehesu. And the Wemi Mehesu, as our sister Netchere Ma'at would be able to concur, is the Wemi Mehesu is what was erected every time there was an indigenous king put on the throne of Kemet. Because anytime you had foreigners come in, Kemet would begin to decline in the culture, in the art, and in its indigenous worldview. And every time an indigenous, well, for the lack of a better term, every time an indigenous pharaoh from the south would be instituted back into the office of the throne, they would erect or resurrect a Wemi Mehesu, a renaissance, a resurgence of the culture, a resurgence of the imagery, a resurgence of Ma'at, the way. Order would be brought back to the valley, to the Happy Valley, particularly in the province of Kemet, or in the state of Kemet. And so that's what this phase of the Nile Valley movement is all about. It's all about resurrecting and erecting a Wemi Mehesu. Now that's important because I want to know, you know, I don't like when people take credit for knowledge that they didn't uncover themselves, because many of us like to speak intelligently as if the things that we've learned are products of our own thoughts. I learned about the Wemi Mehesu from Baba Jacob Carruthers. Now, that should be something special for Senet Netchere Ma'at, because Baba Jacob Carruthers was actually a teacher and a mentor to Seba Rakedi Amen, whom I have great love and respect for. In fact, I spoke with her on the phone a number of times last year, and I was very grateful to do so, a number of times actually. And she holds a very special place in my heart. But it was Seba Jacob Carruthers of the Kemetic Institute in Chicago who really introduced or reintroduced to us the phenomena of the Wemi Mehesu, the Renaissance. And It was in a speech that he gave entitled Medu Nefer, or Good Speech. And I still have the lecture. I have an incredible lecture collection that was absolutely mind-blowing. And I'm going to make it available to all members of the Nile Valley movement. And eventually to the wider public at large. But it's the Nile Valley movement that I seek to feed first, because they are going to be the amplifiers and the retainers and the caregivers and the caretakers of this knowledge, of this sacred knowledge, and so of these sebayets. And so I consider all of these lectures to be sebayets in their own rights, teachings. And so that's what the Nile Valley movement is all about. If you look at two pictures that I furnished you with, Kalam, it should say, one of them should say Nile Valley Movement Foundation. Do you have it available to you? I sent it to you on Facebook some time ago. Right. Excellent. Now, if you look at that photo, can we go back to that? Right. Can we keep it there for a moment? I just want to articulate on it or illustrate. If you look at that photo, at the bottom in the center is my mother, which is why it says my mother on the photo. And next to her, arm in arm, in the safari khakis, with the binoculars around his neck and the glasses, is her godfather, her spiritual godfather, Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen, someone who I grew up around as a young person, intermittently. And if you look in the top row to the right, you will also see Ashra Kwesi. And in the bottom row as well, you will also see his, what was not his wife then, but his future wife, Mary Ra Kwesi. And so this is, and also my mother's second husband is also in the top row, third from the left. He has a dashiki on, and he's to the left of the Hode Maquette, or what they call the Sphinx, incorrectly. And so if you put up the second picture, is the second picture available, Kalam? Caught me eating. Let me know when you can find the second picture, Kalam. Kalam is presenting to everyone. Kalam, do we have the second picture yet? Kalam? Hotep?
Hotep, can everybody see that picture?
I can see the picture. I already gave an explication on this picture. Can we post the second picture?
Okay, let us post the second picture.
I sent you two. One said Nile Valley Movement Foundation. The other one said Nile Valley Movement Foundation #2. Okay. So let's look at, yeah, that's the one. Yeah, right. That's the other one. Now, in this picture, in the center of the picture with the beautiful dashiki on and the tan safari hat is Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen. Again, you can see how much younger he was. Even though it's rather dark, you can see how much younger he was. To the right of him is Mary Ra Kwesi and Ashra Kwesi. And if you look all the way to the left, you'll see it says my mother. Why? Because that is my mother. That is my mut. She lives in Africa today. And so that was actually on a different trip with Dr. Ben. So as I grew up as a young person, as a child, I grew up with a parent who went to Kemet with Dr. Ben just about every year of my late young childhood. From the time I was 8 years old, all the way up until my adulthood, my mother would go to Kemet with Dr. Ben. And so that, I think, in many respects, explains the origin of the Nile Valley movement. It began with my mother, Dr. Ben, Ashra Kwesi, and Mary Ray, and so many others who were there. And I felt it was my responsibility and my obligation to to continue it, to pass it on intergenerationally, to nurture it and take care of it, and to give it my energies, to invest in it, primarily to invest in it, to invest my energies, my life, my time, my resources, as I hope many others will do as well. I hope that there are many others who will find the Now Valley Movement a valuable institution to the community, and that they will seek to contribute and donate, or whatever you want to couch it in terms, whatever terms you want to couch it in. I hope that they will seek to invest their resources in it as well. And that's why I've tried so hard with respect to the art affiliated with it, the lectures affiliated with it. That's why I've tried so hard to give it the best representation possible, which at this juncture is myself and others who are with me, such as the Vice Regent, the esteemed Vice Regent Muntu Mesatep Asa Makil, and also our first wife of Amun, wife of Amin, Sinet Kimatanka Neb Abu. So these are the people who are closest to me as we embark on and undertake this megalithic ancestral Wimi Mehesu. Okay, so I wanted to share that with you, and that's where the Now Valley Movement came from. It came from the source. It really did. It didn't come from any meaningless or shallow or obsolete concept or idea. It is the transmission of tradition, and it is steeped in tradition. It is founded upon tradition, and it exists to pay homage to that tradition and to show respect. So that's where the Now Valley Movement came from. And yes, I have to give a shout out to Kemetic Legacy today, Sister Anika Ma'at, and her wonderful Netaheb Jabari, wonderful brother and sister from the Center for the Restoration of Ma'at, whom I have the deepest love and affection for. And they were the first to really and truthfully extend themselves to me. No, actually they were not. But they were amongst the first. They were certainly amongst the first to truly extend themselves to me in a way that I will never forget and in which I will always be grateful for. Always. They invited me to come on their television show, because that's actually a television show. Even though it's seen on YouTube, it's actually shown on television. And they invited me in, and I was very proud because of the company they keep. They've invited a number of heavyweights on that show. And so to have myself on there, who at the time was basically an unknown artist, was very, very meaningful to me. And to this day, it is still something that holds a lot of weight with me, and I'm still very, very grateful for it. And afterwards, the Sanetta affair, as we'll call it, or the Imam Bashir debacle, as we'll call it, that just happened out of pure coincidence and pure chance. I was just on 125th Street visiting with a close confidant of mine, a sin of mine. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Jack Felder, but you need to look him up. Dr. Jack Felder, he is a biochemist. He's a black biochemist who actually worked at a very well-known famous lab in Long Island, where the AIDS virus was more than likely created or certainly studied by Dr. Robert Gallo, people like that, those white men who created it. Dr. Jack Felder was a biochemist, and he actually got to work with the AIDS virus, and he was able to give very deep, detailed, insightful lectures at the Slave Theater here in New York back in the 90s. And so we were privileged to have very deep inside information on that virus, on that man-made virus. And you can still see it on YouTube. In fact, I'll furnish you with it if you'd like to see it. But in any event, his son, who teaches at Medgar Evers College in Brooklyn, is a very dear friend of mine. He's a son, he's a brother. And I was meeting with him on 125th Street that day, as him and his father, his Yitef, which is the Kemetic term for father, his Yitef Dr. Jack Felder, they're always up there. And I just went to talk with him, get some fresh air, because I was knowing me, I was probably home working on some music videos. Sometimes I have to force myself to get out to get fresh air. And so I just went up there to get some fresh air. And I had a sip of some bhaji. For those of you who don't know what bhaji is, bhaji is something that they sell in the health food stores. However, it is about as strong as Hennessy, but it has very medicinal properties to it. It's made from Chinese herbs, but it is literally as strong as Hennessy or vodka. And I had a bit, and it was cold out, so you wanted to be a little warm. And when I was up there, well, actually, the previous week, a similar situation happened. In fact, it's also on YouTube, I'm pretty sure. There was one before Imam Bashir, and that was a Hebrew Israelite brother. And I forget his name, but we turned out to be very good friends. He actually called me, and he told me after we've had our little exchange, it was rather volatile, but after we had our exchange, he told me that he had already known who I was, that he'd been watching my music videos, which I thought was kind of humorous. And I was here having this debate with somebody who already knew who I was, and I had no idea that he knew. I sometimes like an anonymity when I'm in the street. I don't have that anymore. Everywhere I go, people know me now. I want to say unfortunately, but it's not unfortunately. But it's everywhere I go. It could be in the airport. It could be in Times Square on 42nd Street. It could be any part of the city or on the subway. It'll be the subway token clerk. It'll be the bus driver, whoever it is. And, Shakka Ahmose, the whole family watches you, and we love to learn. And I think that that's awesome because it has little to do with me. I'm just grateful to know that I can amplify the ma'at, the truth that I was furnished with by our esteemed elders and brothers and sisters down through the generations. And so I'm extremely grateful to be that instrument. But I had an exchange with a Hebrew, I think Hebrew Perry, I think is his name. I had an exchange with this brother, and that was the first time that I think Brother Polite got to see me exchange. And of course I went hard. That's what I do. I enjoy it. For me, it's sport. It's never personal. For me, it's purely sport. And so I don't understand why people get so volatile and why they get so why they take things so personal. Because for me, it's sport. We are arguing about things that, as individuals, we had very little to do with. So why take things so personal? Whether you're a Hebrew Israelite, a Christian, or Kemetic person, a Muslim, you didn't write any of this stuff. You didn't put one brick into place. So why would you take it personal? You look silly. It doesn't matter who you are. You look silly. And so I can understand it from a moral perspective, because morality and truth are they are inextricably linked. Morality and truth. And so morality can have a way of inciting passion. And so I appreciate passion. I'm very passionate about the subject matter. Very passionate about truth. But not to the point where I want to inflict harm on someone because they disagree with me or because they don't want to listen to what I have to say. And that is a problem that I have with many in the so-called conscious community. All this talk of violence and all this volatile language, shots fired, and things like that. So I think it's irresponsible, and I basically want no part of it. And let me make something very clear from the outset, because I know that there's an upcoming debate. There's a debate coming up. I want to be very clear, and that is all of the participants in the debate have my support. All. That means both sides. Particularly my side, of course. Our side, I think, has much good to do in the debate. However, if it were not for the Hebrew Israelites championing their ideology, they would not inspire many of us to read and to study to find out if what they say is true. So they are the impetus for much of the studying that is taking place, and they should be rewarded for that, even if only because of their genuine passion and love and fervor that they have for what they believe. And so both sides have my support. But of course, with respect to both sides have my support, the Kemetic side and the Hebrew Israelite side. But my loyalty is to the people at large. So I want to be very clear on that. It's to the people at large, primarily to Ma'at, to truth. Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. When I have to say something unflattering about Kemet, I will not hesitate. But equally so, when I must say something unflattering about any other, how can I put it? Kemet, first you have to understand that in many respects, Kemet is not an ideology. And we try not to approach Kemet from an ideological perspective. Well, let me speak for myself. I try not to approach Kemet from an ideological perspective, other than a racial ideological perspective. But other than that, it's purely historical. Purely historical. And that is because if you understand anything about the indigenous African and his relationship to history and how it intertwines, how it in many respects is his religion or her religion, then you will understand why history for myself is paramount with respect to my approach, not Kemet from a religious perspective. You understand? Not Kemet from a religious perspective, because there was not one belief in Kemet. There were various beliefs, innumerable beliefs. You follow? So for me to stand and if you're right, for me to stand and champion one, no, I couldn't do that. Absolutely.
Ooh, you know, I don't want you to give any fuel to the fire for the Hebrew side, because they may just call that Kemet as having one monolithic, paradigm. So I don't want you to give away anything, any secrets to kind of offset the debate. So, Rabbi Shakka Ahmose, you have a very powerful name, a very, very, very powerful name. And I know a lot of the members are always questioning, like, where does this name actually come from? Like, what is this name? Is it Shakka? Did the name Shakka come through your inspiration via the music, with Shaka Khan, etc.? Or did the name Shakka come way back, go way back into time, into African history or ancient Egyptian history? We want to know, where does the name Shakka Ahmose actually come from, and why did you feel, or who bestowed it upon you, and why did you feel that it was fitting for you as a person?
Okay, I'm going to give you a treat. I'm going to give Talk with the Titans a treat, Sin Kalam. And I'll tell you why I say that. Normally, and by the way, I'm eating grapes for those who want to know why I'm chewing and eating, just to keep my mouth salivated. And plus, I've eaten nothing today. I always forget before I have radio interviews or any type of interview to eat food because these things last long and it's not pleasant to speak on an empty stomach. However, with respect to my name, Shakka Ahmose, let me be very clear on something. I was not born Shakka Ahmose, okay? However, the name that I was born with, or rather the name that I was given at birth, was ill-suitable for me to go through life with, simply because by the way it means by which we came, by the way it means in which many of us come by, the names conferred upon us from birth. These names are usually given to us at a certain point in our parents' education. And at the time that I was named, my mother's own education had not reached that point where she could furnish me or my siblings with proper names. So in any event, the name that I was given at birth as it has no application in my life now other than as a DBA, doing business as. In some aspects, I do use the name when it comes to business, which I think serves me well because my true name, the name that I was eventually given, it has such value to me that I prefer it not be in the clutches of government auspices. But in any event, my mother, coming back from Africa with Dr. Ben on one of her mini trips, as my favorite uncle, Professor James Small said the other day, he actually said this. We were at the House of Consciousness. Shout out to the House of Consciousness. Shout out to Sarnetta. And shout out to Sin Polite, Saber Polite, and Saber Reggie. Professor James Small said, oh, and shout out to the Nile Valley Movement Facebook page. I love you all. Thank you for being a part of the family. He said to Sarnetta and to everyone else present, both he and Professor Hiawatha Khomeini were there, formerly Booker Coleman. He said, Shakka Ahmose's mother, he said Africa has 50 countries, 52 countries, 50 countries. On a good day, 52. On a bad day, 50. It depends on if there's a coup. He said Africa has 50 countries. He said Shaka's mother has been to darn near 48 of them. And in many respects, that's true. My mother has been going to Africa since I was a child, and she now lives there. She's been living there for well over half a decade. Oh, actually, no, well over. She's been living there for almost a decade. And so she married into the Akan people, and she has Akan children, and she has a home, a farm, and that kind of thing. But on one of her trips back from Africa, she determined, as it was her place to, that the name that we had been given at birth, my siblings and myself, they were not appropriate or proper for us. And so she took it upon herself, which was her right to do, to furnish us with names that were appropriate and proper for us to have. And so the name that she actually gave me was not Shaka. It was actually the name of a 25th dynasty king who had come up from Nubia, from Tarseti, from Kush. And his name was actually Shabaka. And sometimes he's called Sabakon. Sometimes it's pronounced Sabakon. And I didn't particularly care for the name. It sounded too foreign to my ears. Although now I love it and I appreciate it. And it is actually, that is my true name, Shabaka or Sabakon. And as most people do in society, if a name is going to be difficult for other people to pronounce or it sounds too foreign, I shortened it to something that would be easier for them to remember and to pronounce, which was Shaka. So from Shabaka to Shaka. So if you go to certain countries, when I first was furnished with the name from my mother, there are people who only know me as Shabaka. Okay? Although now I'm sure they know me as Shakka Ahmose. But because I shortened it from Shabaka or Sabakon to Shaka, the name just stuck, Shaka. Although in fact, in truth, it is Shabaka or Sabakon. Okay? And so I also liked it because what very few people know about the Zulu in South Africa is that the Zulu's tradition have them actually coming from the Nile Valley. And if you look at the neckwear that the Zulu wear, it is identical to the neckwear that was worn throughout the Nile Valley Basin, particularly in ancient Egypt. And so they have a history, a legitimate documented history that does take them back to ancient Egypt. And so I felt that by owning the name Shaka, I would be reunifying the South with the North. From Southern Africa, from the tip of the continent, from the southern tip, which is actually the northern tip, because you know the world has been turned upside down. So from the northern tip of the continent to the southern tip, where Kemet or Egypt is, which is today the northern tip. Okay, so I unified them by having the name. The Ahmose was, you know, in African society, as you go from threshold to threshold, you are furnished with a new name because you had a new place. And the name that I sought to personify was based on a contribution, on the contribution that I wanted to make to my people. Be we in America, be we in the UK, be we in the Caribbean, be we on the continent. What I wanted to do was, I wanted to get the foreigners outside of our brains, outside of our hearts, outside of our souls, outside of our pockets, and outside of our beds. I wanted to be free of the foreigners, which means that I had to become something, an instrument that would banish the foreigners from amongst us. The Tamahu, the Nahebu, right? All of these foreigners, I wanted to become an instrument that would banish these foreigners from amongst us. And so I looked into Kemet, I looked into Tawi, I looked into Tameri for that instrument that had successfully banished the foreigners from amongst us. And if you look to the end of the 17th dynasty, you will find a family that begins with, doesn't begin with Sennacherib Ray, but Sennacherib Ray is one of the main figures in it. And his wife and or mother, Tetasheti, they were the progenitors of a particular family line that gave birth to the 18th dynasty. And the main descendant, two descendants in that lineage, were very instrumental in banishing the foreigners from amongst us and reasserting native rule. And that would have been Kamos and his brother Ahmose. And these two, in the tradition of their father, who had, or grandfather, father and or grandfather, who had been, I'm a bit rusty, folks, who had been killed on the battlefield fighting against the foreigners. I don't even call them Hyksos because that's such a poor term to use, but fighting against the Hikasui, right, the indigenous term, he was killed. In fact, they still have his skull in the museum with the hole where he was fatally injured in his cranial. Yes. But he did that on behalf of the people to banish the foreigners from amongst us. So he was a Malcolm X. He was a Marcus Garvey in his own time, okay? Because he was a black man who did this to get rid of the foreigners from outside of Africa who had abused their stay on our continent and in our state and our civilization. Absolutely. So that's where the name comes from. It came from Ahmose. And do not forget their sister, the most important queen of all of them. That would be Ahmose Nefertari, because she is called, even to this day, she is called the great ancestress, the great foundress. So I had to get that. I always say all black women should do a 14-page study on Ahmose Nefertari. And if they have daughters, they should force their daughters to write a 10-page report on Ahmose Nefertari and read it in school or publish it.
Wow! Listen, we've just had a world exclusive from our senator, our brother Shakka Ahmose, our Achi, our brother Shakka Ahmose, just giving us the insight of his name. It was originally Shabaka. Can you imagine? I wouldn't even have fathomed that, to be honest with you. You know what? The reason why I'm asking these questions, because there is a very potent and poignant line within inside of one of Shakka Ahmose's songs called Pharaoh. And it says, if you get to know when you get to know my story, maybe then you will understand or know my purpose. So these line of questioning is following that train of thought. I want to get to know
Very good. I'm impressed.
Green. Okay.
I'm impressed. That's very good. You were paying attention to the lyrics. I'm impressed.
Of course. And we already know inside of African traditions or even Egyptian traditions, a man's root or ren, gives him his purpose. He tells us his purpose in life. He tells us that thing, that object, that thing in existence. It allows us to know its purpose in life. So his name is a very important thing for us to know. I think if we study Shabaka, we study Ahmose, we can clearly see the parallels between those individuals and our Senator and Savior right now, Shakka Ahmose. Everybody out there in YouTube land, if you're loving this information and you want to hear more, just give us a big thumbs up. Let us know that you love this information as well. Please hit the share button. Let everybody know right now that our brother Shakka Ahmose is in the studios. He's here willing to answer any question that we throw at him. So please hit that subscribe button and hit that share button. Also, a little treat for you, lot. This is going to be a little treat for my diehard fans out there. This is literally the second month that we're up and running to the exact date. The second month to the exact date that we'll be up and running, and we have amassed an amazing 1,000 plus subscribers. 1,000 plus subscribers we've amassed within those 2 months of being live on air. And as a thank you, and as a big thank you message to everybody out there who is calm and come in, being the very first adopters, had faith in the vision of where things will be heading, and came in and hit the subscribe button and shared it to their friends, being that change agent, wanting to see the best within inside of our community. We want to reward you. We want to open up a Teen Titans where literally all our trailers, I know you've heard our trailers that have come in before, our trailers, you're going to be the very first people to hear the trailers before it goes public. Our messages from our Titans. We're going to do a short interview before it goes up. On Talk with the Titans is going to be there. We're going to have clips of our Titans doing lectures and so forth that won't be out open anywhere in the public, but just simply for Talk with the Titans fans. So if you're part of Team Titans, let us know. Let us know you want to be involved with that, and we're going to send you direct links, direct private links, should I say, so you can view all of the content, directly to yourselves and to yourselves only. Please don't share the link to anybody. It's a thank you for you lot coming and subscribing when you did. Hopefully, in the next 2 months, we can double that. We can get 3,000 subscribers, okay? We want to get 3,000 subscribers as well. We want to help out. If you check on our About Us page after you subscribe, check on our About Us page. It tells you right at the bottom our goals for 2015. One of our goals in 2015 is to bring over the Titans from the USA to the UK, so we could do lectures, tours, debates, workshops, the whole 9 yards across the country, from London all the way up to Birmingham, Luton, Northamptonshire, Manchester, etc. So if you want to get involved with that, please hit me up if you're in the UK, and we can sort something out as well. We also want to help out businesses. We want to help out ethical businesses. We want to support you. We want to promote you as well. So if you are a business, an ethical business, and you would love to be supported by the Talk with the Titans, hit me up in the business email address, which is kalam@live.co.uk. Hit me up, and we'll see what we can do for you. Definitely. So yeah, Shakka Ahmose. Let's see. What other questions have been on my mind to ask you? What other questions have been on my mind to ask you? So far, you've actually enlightened us to know, because what you said right there was very key. It was a renaissance, an African renaissance. When I see your music videos, I see that African renaissance coming in with the music, the lyrics, the whole culture, the apparels that you're wearing constantly. Could you let our audience out there know where they can purchase the T-shirts, the apparels that you wear, etc.? Where can we actually, kind of get, thread it out? Where can we get those stuff?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I'm gonna put a link in the chat room just so that nobody has a hard time finding it. www.thenilevalleymovement.com. So when you go there, if you go to the page marked apparel, you should have no problem finding it. And again, that's www.thenilevalleymovement, one word, www.thenilevalleymovement.com. You can go on there, you can order the t-shirts. Let me tell you something. There are some incredible things that are coming to that website. We're getting off to a slow start, but it's because based on the quality and the largeness of what it is that you're doing, some things take longer than others to get off the ground. I mean, if you're doing something small, if you're building a straw house, you can do that in 5 minutes. If you're building a house made of wood, you know, it take you a little longer, hammer the nails. When you're doing one made of brick, you got to make the bricks, you got to mix the cement, you got to wait for it to dry, you know, it takes a little longer, but you can build a lot bigger. So I'm telling you, there are some incredible things. The NileValleyMovement.com is going to be the flagship website for black people who want to get their minds back. And the reason that I say that is because what black people fail to understand is that, and not just black people, white people don't understand it, but what they understand or don't understand is not of importance to me. It's what we understand. What we as a race fail to understand is that we had a frontal lobotomy performed on us by foreigners, by white people in antiquity when they came into Africa and when they took over Egypt. And that lobotomy, I won't say, I would say, I think I will quote Dr. John Henry Clark, because I think he said it most aptly. After the 25th dynasty, Egypt was, for all intents and purposes, overran by foreigners, taken control of by people who were not quite black, people who were not quite white, but as Dr. John Henry Clark would say, often did say, and my younger sister was his secretary, by the way, and his wife, a very dear friend of my mother's, Sybil Clark. It was taken over by people who were caught in racial midriff. And so my goal has been to get back for black people their intellectual property and to put it back in the rightful hands of its owners. And that, for the most part, that's the first time I ever articulated that, to help me be very clear on what it is that I seek to do, or what it is that drives me to do what I do. But that's what it is. It is to reclaim the intellectual and spiritual property, because those things, the intellectual and the spiritual, will guide the physical. In fact, I don't put one before the other. To me, they're all equally relevant. The spirit, the physical as well, because you can't discount the physical. People like to take spirituality and put it somewhere here and physical. No, they're all opposite ends of the same continuum. And they're not even at opposite ends. They're just integrally a part of one the other. And so the physical can give rise to the spiritual just as much as the spiritual can give rise to the physical. And so my thing is just to put it all back together for us, for black people. And with respect to the imagery, Kalam, this is important. The reason, what I want people to understand about the imagery, whether it be the shirts, whether it be the wardrobe that I wear in the music videos, or whether it be my daily dress, my daily attire, my daily wardrobe, which is I dress this way every day. It's because I noticed a long time ago that the number one focus when it comes to white people, the white media, when it comes to white media, be it academic or film or literature, the number one thing that they do, the number one thing that they attack is our image. And until black people understand the importance of resurrecting your image, you will be nothing but an aesthetic stepchild to the world. In other words, you will always be seen in the uniform of your oppressor. You will always be seen in the attire of your oppressor. You will always send the message out to the world that he is better than you. When you wear a baseball cap, you are telling the world that this white man's taste, his sense of what is right and wrong or appropriate or good or beautiful is better than your own, which is why I don't wear baseball hats anymore. It's why you won't see me wearing many things that attest to or that validate the white man's sense of aesthetics. You got to remember, he attacks us on many levels. He and she. I don't separate them, the white male or the white female. And it's not just white people. We need to wake up from that fantasy. As Dr. John Henry Clark used to say, black people have no friends. So you can't say, oh, but what about Asians? Oh, but what about mixed folks? Or what about, no. History has had its say. And it says that if we're going to generalize, and sometimes you have to generalize. If you're going to generalize, black people have no friends. And so, therefore, what I tell everyone is that, as far as black people are concerned, if you're going to invest your focus, if you want to put a fist together to really give our tormentors a black eye, then you want to focus on resurrecting the image. Image is key. That's why our greatest enemies are in Hollywood. Do not be fooled by that. Do not be misled or understood. Your greatest enemies are in Hollywood. The majority of them are Jews, white Jews. That does not mean all Jewish people are bad. It does not mean all white people are bad. But that should not prevent us from being able to identify a small demographic of people who have made it clear that their agenda is to portray us to ourselves and to the world the way they see us. Never mind how we see ourselves. Never mind what the historical record says. I watched 2 movies within the last 48 hours, and they both showed the same thing when it came to black people. I watched 300, Part 2, Rise of an Empire, and I watched Exodus, Gods and Kings. In both movies, black people were shown in servitude and as slaves. And white people have made it very clear. They're not ambiguous about it. They're not ambivalent about it. They're very clear about it. That they only see us as slaves. That is our historical footprint. That is our historical hallmark. They will only, and they will invest millions in showing us in that capacity to the world. They did it with 12 Years a Slave. They did it with The Help. They did it with The Butler. Even if you look at the names of these movies, they are going to reinforce this. You understand? And so every black producer in Hollywood, that does not fight this, every black producer, every black director, every black actor, be they an executive producer or otherwise, but every black person in Hollywood with an interest in bringing media to the world pertaining to black people, those that do not fight that unfair indictment of an entire race, historically speaking, they are complicit and in partnership with their white benefactors, colleagues, lovers, and friends who do this to us. They destroy our children before our children are even out of grade school by doing this. Why? Because the mind is susceptible to media in a way that it is acceptable to nothing else. And that is why I put the focus on the image. That is why you see my Heru lock. That is why you see my consul lock. That is why you see me in the attire of my ancestors. Because I am of the firm perspective that what we have to offer is not only as good, but better than. And so that is why I take great pride in the image that you see me championing when you see me championing.
That being said, you know, your images are very striking and send a very positive message. So with that being said, let's actually present to the audience an image of Shakka Ahmose in his greatness.
In our ancestral greatness.
Once in a test, caught in a wire, like to pit his wits, will, and instant fury. Was his initiation. The crown, king.
Wow, you can't handle the truth. The champ is here. The champ is here. Listen, we need to get it turned up now. It's time to actually get this really turned up. In that video, it says that, you know, this person, this champion, this king was constantly tested, had to pit his wits and will against the Hebrews' fury to be crowned king. It was his initiation to be crowned king. So I want to talk about the Hebrew Israelites. That's what I want to talk about right now. That's what's hot on everybody's lips. No, you know what? No. Before I actually talk about the Hebrew Israelites, I've got one more question, or several questions I need to ask you before I get into that. Because I know the audience want to hear about this Hebrew Israelite information, but before that, I would like to know actually, what do I want to know? I would like to know, what star sign are you? That's my first question actually. I want to know, what star sign are you? The reason why I ask this, by your demeanor, by your demeanor, I can tell that you have a very airy sign about you, very intellectual sign about you. You know, you move, you flow with the wind, basically. You gain that inspiration real quick and just do something in that split moment. But yet again, you also have, you know, a slight Gemini side about you. I don't know if you are a Gemini or not. I'm saying you got that Gemini side about you, where literally you're cool one moment, and then in the next moment, we're going in. It's fire, like gladiator spirit that's ready to just tear up that information. So that's one of the questions that I want to know, and then I'm going to ask you about your Horus look, actually.
Okay. One, the air, the deity, the nectar that represents air is Shu. And so I would have to say Tu. Tu in the Meduneter is yes. So Tu, Shu governs my my sun sign, my astrological sign. I am a Gemini. So good for you. Yes. Very insightful. I said he had to research that or something. Somebody, he had to see it on Facebook or YouTube or something, hear it in a song. But cause I even mentioned it in one of my songs. But yes, I am a Gemini on the Cancer cusp, and so that should explain, I guess, some things about me, a lot of things about me. So one of my favorite Geminis, of course, was my sin, which means brother, Tupac Shakur, because he just espoused that whole Gemini ethos. And there are others as well, but he would be my favorite. Gemini, absolutely. I think that was the question you asked. What was my air sign or my astrological sign? I am a Gemini, and I've always been very cognizant of it. Horus and Set together, uncle and nephew together, in one person. At odds sometimes, because Horus and Set were not always at odds. Sometimes they both simultaneously worked in service of Re and in service of Asar. So, but yes, they deal with succession, Horus and his uncle Set, and so that whole conflict of succession certainly takes place with myself. Absolutely, yeah. Gemini, June 20th to be exact.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, hole in one. Amazing. Okay. You see that? That's the senses right there. I'm seeing. You know, that's that foresight. Okay. All right. So you know what, yeah, there's been so much talk about this Horus lock. Some people call it a Honsu lock, some people call it a Horus lock. What it would be a lot of people want this lock that you have. Want to conquer Shakka Ahmose and dethrone him and to take away his Horus
lock. I don't know why they got to think about my lock. Like, what is that all about?
So, what would it take to get to how could someone take Shakka Ahmose's lock? How could they take it?
How could they take it? I guess the same way. You know what? I want to say the same way they took Kemet, or the same way they took ancient Egypt. But the reality of it is that ancient Egypt was not taken. Aspects of it were taken. But when you really look at what happened in Egypt, to a very large degree, the Egyptians themselves gave it up. And they gave it up through not proscribing their sexual policies. And why do I say that? I say that because if you look at the bas-reliefs of ancient Kemet prior to the 18th dynasty, you only see black people on the walls. You don't see other people. From the 18th dynasty on, even in the Middle Kingdom, you don't see other people. Whether you go to the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, First Intermediate people, period, you don't see other races. At least not in any explicit way, form, or fashion. Not as anything integral to the society. But when you get to the 18th dynasty, after the expulsion of the Asians, you begin to see a preponderance, a proliferation of white women on the walls. Now, you have to look at those bas-reliefs in two ways. The first way is what I presume. When the Hyksos were chased out, there was a surplus of women that were left, or that may not have wanted to leave. Why would you want to leave the lap of luxury and comfort and go back into the desert? Right? So many of the women, I believe, were given the option to stay, because men finding women in ancient times was not always an easy thing. Sometimes they would go on raids to find women or bring women back as booty of war. That was the whole entire old world. And so here you had a surplus of women. I'm sure many elected and opted to stay because of the creature comforts of civilization. But the bottom line is that you then begin to get an admixture, a proliferation of mulattoes to some degree or another being born in ancient Egypt. And as Dr. Chancellor Williams points out in his Destruction of Black Civilization, that would prove to be their undoing in the long run, as he illustrated in later chapters, because he mentions it in the second chapter. Uh, uh, Egypt, Ethiopia's oldest daughter, he mentions it in that chapter. In fact, if you'd like, I can read an excerpt from it. Would you like to hear the mulatto issue that I'm talking about?
I think our audience definitely would. They definitely
Okay. Here we go.
I'm seeing
This
thumbs
is,
up left and right.
here it is. This is a passage from the book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, Great Issues of a Race, 4000 BC to 2000 AD. This is chapter 2, Ethiopia's oldest daughter, Egypt, page 62 to 64, second and first paragraph, respectively. This is what it says. The melting pot, and I want those people who think that it's okay to have white boyfriends, I want those black people who think that it's okay to have white boyfriends and white girlfriends or marry other races. I want you to just listen to this, okay? I'm not saying that it's not okay. I'm just saying that when you do anything, you should always consider the outcome. It has nothing to do with good or bad. So this is what it says. The melting pot of the races began around the northern perimeter of Egypt. The end result was always the same. The blacks were pushed to the bottom of the social, economical, and political ladder whenever and wherever their mulatto offspring gained control. That's very important, because it wasn't the foreigners that were pushing them down. It was their mulatto offspring. In other words, the mulattoes begin to coalesce around their own half-breedness. You understand? It's very important. The scheme of weakening the blacks by turning their half-white brothers against them cannot be overemphasized, because it began in the early times, became the universal practice of whites, and is still one of the cornerstones of white power. That's from Chancellor Williams' The Destruction of Black Civilization. This is why I don't play that mulatto shit. You understand? It has nothing to do with not liking someone because they're a mulatto. My first love was mulatto. She was half black and half Italian and part Hungarian. But and I know I have I'm sure I have biracial, because you don't use the term mulatto anymore. It's biracial. I'm sure I have biracial relatives. I have biracial friends. I'm not telling them to hate themselves and to go jump off of a bridge because you're biracial. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that each race on this planet has an obligation to ensure its own survival. And so from a responsible perspective, it would seem prudent to me, as if, particularly knowing that we are at war on this planet and that white supremacy is basically the rule on this planet, particularly as the handmaiden of capitalism, because I think capitalism is a far worse, more destructive power than white supremacy. But I really don't separate the two, because I think to some degree or another, well, there are certainly now this form of capitalism that exists today is a product of white supremacy, because it came about when white people were already in a certain place. You know, that's another conversation. But the bottom line is that when you produce mixed children, I believe it's irresponsible to do so without asking yourself this one question. What impact is that going to have on the advancement of my race? If you are not racially conscious, then the question is irrelevant. It's mute. It has no gravity in your life. There's no need for you to ask the question. But then understand at that point that you are racially irrelevant to us, or just irrelevant to us, to those of us who are racially conscious. You follow what I'm saying? For those biracial people who identify with black people, primarily with their Africanness, as Dr. John Henry Clark said, you have the option. You can stay in your father's house and perpetuate his agenda, or you may come home to your mother's house. But there will be no vacillation back and forth. Because when we see you on the battlefield, you cannot cry half black then. It will be far too late. And those are the words of Dr. John Henry Clark. So, and that is not, let me say this, that is not an indictment of biracial people. I think that biracial people are as divine as all other human beings are on this planet. What I'm talking about is in the context of racial confrontation and racial contentiousness. That is what I'm talking about. It's such a pleasure to be on your show, Kalam L, because I feel like I'm finally getting for people to get to see the real me. This is because this is my normal demeanor. It's not really what you see in the other platforms. This is who I normally am. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, wow. So, we're constantly just receiving insight to the depth and character of Shakka Ahmose. So I am happy, you know, for Shakka Ahmose to be in the studios and giving us insight in the way he thinks and the way he feels. But you know what? There's actually a video that's been circulating around the internet right now. Personally, I've banned that video from ever, you know, being shown within inside of the Facebook group, which is Talk with the Titans. Talk with the Titans is the Facebook group we have in operation. So if you want to join Talk with the Titans, we have a host of Titans on there that are constantly posting and constantly answering all your questions as well. So if you want to get in that group, just type in, you know, Talk with the Titans. You can get in there. Because my ethos is, you know, I want to leave a legacy. I want to leave a legacy to my children. Okay, and I want our children to be part of this conscious movement that we're growing. And you know, as it stands right now, we've got you know, we've got even our Titans. They sit down with their family, with their children. We've got Lord Abba, you know, who's tuning in right now, sitting down with his daughters, his beautiful children. He's got beautiful children, a beautiful tribe of children listening into these shows. We had Dr. Ali Muhammad in the past, you know, sitting down. His son was just there running around, and they're there constantly around, you know, the adults, constantly around this conscious community. Personally, how I, you know, first became, you know, quite astute and loved my thirst for information was just was actually you know, my mom was always reading books. She had a big bookshelf with loads of books on there. And when she would go out, I would actually sneak into her room, you know, pick a book, you know, take it out. I think it was a mind book. It was one of the first books that I took out and learned about psychology. And I used to pit my mom and my father against each other, but don't tell anybody about that, because that's using the knowledge. Children, don't do this. I'm saying it, but don't do this out there. So, yeah, all jokes aside, you know, so we've got a whole community just sitting down watching these on the YouTube, watching them on their TV screens, watching them in the barbershops, having conversation. So we want to keep it a family-friendly environment where a whole community can grow with each other. And there's certain videos out there that I personally can't promote within inside of the group. So I'm actually going to just kind of mention it. It's to do with gangs and gang culture. You know, personally, we have loads of gangs in the UK. Was I ever part of a gang? It depends on what you classify as a gang. Because growing up, you know, we usually had about 10, 15 friends, school friends, you know, friends that live around the area that we all used to, you know, roll with each other, and we were considered a gang, but we was a friendly gang. We never got up into the violence, and we never did anything wrong. We were just considered a gang, sometimes looked at as negative. But right. So I don't have no problems with that. But the problem that I do have is gang culture that promotes violence. So I would like to know your thoughts on that.
Okay, well, let me say this. This is why it's very important to know history. What many black people fail to understand is that the gang is not a new concept. In fact, it goes back as a state instrument to the Byzantine Empire, to the Eastern Roman Empire. Basically, gangs at that time, particularly under the rule of Justinian I and his wife Theodora, under these monarchs, if you will, they were actually emperor and empress. Under them, you had sport factions in Byzantium, in this part of Turkey, where they were in, I think it was Bithynia, I'm not sure, but in this particular part of Turkey, Constantinople, you had sport factions, much like you do in the UK today. And these sport factions basically operated as gangs. And in fact, it was under Justinian I and his wife Theodora that these factions were identified by colors, like you'd have in California today. In California today, in America, you have, and all over the United States, you have Bloods and you have Crips, or Crips and Bloods. And they're identified by colors, blue and red. But that didn't start with them. That actually goes back to Constantinople in the Eastern Roman Empire under Justinian I and his wife Theodora. The sport factions were carved up, if you will, and separated into groups, or coalesced into groups, and the groups were identified by colors. You had the greens, you had the blues, you had the reds. And in fact, both the emperor and the empress sitting on the throne of Christianity at that time, each one had a different faction that was under their thumb. So the queen might have the reds under her, and the king might have the blues under him. In fact, ironically, Theodora came out of one of the factions. That's how he met her. He met her because she was dancing in one of their brothels. And so I said that to say that, and there were some interesting outcomes with that. But I said that to say that you have to understand that gang culture has a place in power politics. You understand? Whether consciously or in spite of itself. And so, in other words, it is a resource, like every other thing in society. It is a resource to be used. And I think that there is a responsible way to use it, and I think that there's an irresponsible way to use it. I think if we use gang culture responsibly and engage it responsibly, something beautiful, powerful, and instrumental can come out of it. If used irresponsibly, then it will only perpetuate the cycle of self-destruction and genocide that they are so often responsible for. So that's my perspective on gang culture. Have I myself ever been a part of gangs? Of course. Did I live a street life? Of course. Did I pay consequences for living that street life? Yes, I did. And so I know what it's like to sit up in a mountain in an empty cell, cold floor, and look out and only see rocks and mountains, and see a bird bringing a leaf to the window. I know what that's like. I've done it. And so for me, it was very monastic. It was like being in a monastery, because you get to be quiet inside and commune with yourself and things of that nature. But you also have to learn how to use your hands, which I did very successfully. But yeah, so that's my perspective with gang culture. It's a resource.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I have to. This is a very personal question, but is that where you got your teardrops from?
Okay. Now I'm going to give you another treat. I'm giving you the treats, Kalam.
Woo! Oh my gosh, another world exclusive. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, yeah, it is a world exclusive, absolutely. Well, I mean, hey, if you're smart enough to ask the right questions, then you get the right answers. So, unfortunately, some of those other platforms, unfortunately, have their own agenda, and I've always felt they're missing the best of what I have to offer. So, I mean, that's my own perspective. Here we go. I'm going to put something in the chat room so that everyone can read it as well, and then I'm going to read it out loud. Okay? So now most of the times when you see a tear on someone's face, a tattooed tear, it has a number of meanings, right? It means, one, that you lost someone very close to you, someone died, right? It means that. It also means that you did time and you tear for the years that you lost. And it also means that you have taken a life. Okay? So, now, if I wanted to tell you that this teardrop on my face was for any of those reasons, I can say that if I wanted to, I could pick two of those reasons and say yes, that's why it's there, and it would be legitimate. I would recommend that you don't try and guess which two. However, I just posted a passage from a book entitled Egyptian Mythology, A Guide to the Gods and Goddesses and Traditions of Ancient Egypt, Oxford University Press. I'm going to read it for you. It says, Atum was a self-created deity, the first being to emerge from the darkness, an endless watery abyss that existed before creation, what we know of as Noon. A product of the energy and matter contained in his chaos, he created his children, the first deities out of loneliness. He produced from his own sneeze, or in some accounts, semen, Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture. The brother and sister, curious about the primeval waters that surrounded them, went to explore the waters and disappeared into the darkness. Unable to bear his loss, Atum sent a fiery messenger, the Eye of Re, to find his children. The tears of joy he shed on their return were the first human beings. That's what that tear represents. It is a tear of Atum.
Powerful.
I told you I'd give you a treat.
Wow. I'm just taken aback right now. So it's a solemn moment. Just take that in. I'm actually going to try to get that particular quote up for everybody in the chat rooms. I don't think it's too long to actually get it up. So what I will do, I will leave it in the description box down below. In the description box down below, when it's finished, you see it there. You also see the Nile Valley Movement website there as well to buy all your apparels, buy all your books and DVDs from the Nile Valley Movement. So I will leave the description. I will leave.
I don't know why, because my mom just spoke to him earlier. I'm not maybe.
Okay. So sorry, pardon me. All right. Vecha Okay. There we go. All right. Okay. So, Shakka, you have a massive, monolithic debate coming up. It is entitled Kemet on Trial. Okay? Hebrew Israelites versus Kemet. I would like to know. Actually, no. Do I want to know? Actually, let's know this. Let's know this. What do you feel about this debate coming up? How is your feelings about this debate?
Everyone, I'm getting that a lot. Let me say this. First and foremost, I think that it's poorly titled. Why? Because the person who has been on trial, if you will, the entity that has been on trial for the past 1,700 years, almost 2,000 years. Actually, no, I'm sorry, longer. The person has been on trial for well over 2,000 years. Well over 2,000 years. Has been 800 and then 2,000. 2,000, almost 3,000 years. The person that has been on trial for almost 3,000 years has been ancient Kemet, Egypt. And the people who had them on trial were the biblical authors. Okay? They made an accusation that ancient Kemet enslaved Hebrews for 400 years. Egypt has made no accusation on the Hebrew Israelites. So why should Kemet be on trial? The people who need to be on trial, if I had it my way, would be the Hebrew Israelites, because they are the ones that have more to answer for than anyone else. It is they who made the accusation, not Kemet. So someone please explain to me why Kemet is on trial. That makes no sense. Now I understand the reason that that was given is because the Hebrew Israelite community feels as if they are under severe attack. Well, to many respects, I knew that would happen once people were exposed to myself, which is why for a very long time I avoided the gaze and the attention of people, because I knew that there would be some type of conflagration, ideologically speaking, and I wasn't sure how I would handle it and how I would deal with it or what would become of it. However, since I am a part of this community, apparently an essential part of the community, I don't have the luxury of being quiet about these matters or not speaking to them. So again, I would reiterate that ancient Kemet makes no accusation in their annals concerning the Hebrew Israelites. So why should we be on trial? In fact, you have a hard time finding any mention of Hebrew Israelites in Kemetic text. Okay, so why should we be on trial? It makes absolutely no sense. Well, the reason is because most of the platform that is providing the debate, a large part of their audience is Hebrew Israelites. So, you got to play the audience. It is what it is. That's no slight against what it is. It is what it is. So, but I understand why brother Yan, I forget to say how to say his name correctly, Yandala. I hope I'm saying it correct. He's a good brother. I appreciate him very much. A Hebrew Israelite brother. I can understand why he feels they are under attack. To some degree they are, but I don't think that they are. I've never personally attacked the Hebrew Israelites. What I sought to do with my book, Game Over, what I sought to do with that book was to shed light on the source of literature and ideology as concerns Africa's contribution to the world. If you love biblical literature, if you love the wisdom in Proverbs, if you love the wisdom in Psalms, if you love the idea of resurrection, if you love the idea of going into your grave or dying and then 3 days later ascending into heaven, if these things appeal to your to your spirit, then all I wanted to say was give the authors of this ideology their just due, and those would be, documentally speaking, the inhabitants of the Nile Valley, the ancient Egyptians primarily, and the Nubians as well, or the people of Tasseti, okay, or of Ta-Nehisi. So, and I think that that's fair and equitable, so that when we are talking about Black History Month, and people want to talk about Jesus is black for Black History Month, well, why don't you talk about the ethos and the worldview and the ideology that your Black Jesus got from the Black people in the Nile Valley? Talk about it. You act as if he was not raised there in his own narrative, in his own story. It's as if people who want to champion the Bible don't read it, which causes me frustration. Why should your jaw fall agape, open? Why should you be so surprised that Jesus is somehow connected to the ancient Egyptian worldview when your own narrative tells you that an angel appeared to Joseph and said, take your son into Egypt? It didn't say take him to the Bronx. It didn't say take him to Canaan. It didn't say take him to Assyria. It didn't say take him to Queens, New York, or to the UK, to Birmingham. It said take him to Egypt. Where is Egypt? It's not in Russia. It's not in China. And it's not, as some morons like to think, in South America. It is in the Nile Valley. where it's always been. So it's so surprising that all of this, and in fact, look at the sick dichotomy of it all. It is the Hebrew Israelites who themselves seek to create some type of connection and relationship to Egypt, however twisted it may be, but then in the same breath, they want you to believe that Egypt in no way has anything to do with anything that they have projected to the world. It's sick. It's absolutely, it escapes all possibilities of reason. And this is when you know you are speaking to a people who, as far as I'm concerned, are ideologically insane. And that's my own perspective. That's all. That's what I think about the debate.
Ooh, heated words. I know our brother Israel Doctrine. Our brother Israel Doctrine will have a lot to say about those words right there. I don't know if you know, he came on the show. He gave a rebuttal to your book, Codex Game Over. There has been a lot of Hebrew Israelites trying to rebut your Codex Game Over. The question is, anybody could rebut a piece of work, but can they successfully bring up objections that can then be converted to refutations and prove you wrong? And this
Thank you. That's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. Rebuttal is not refutation.
That's right. That's right. And this is yet to be known. February the 8th, Kemet on trial. Please buy your tickets as soon as possible. I believe you can buy them on either Town Zone TV, on the Sarnetta TV, or through our brother Polite, the young phenom, on his 2012 stores. Okay, I believe they're $20 online or $25 on the door. Wow. Tazariak, you out there? You listening? Tazariak, ISUPK, you listening? Damn. All right, Nazi, I know you're listening. I salute you, my brother, all day long. Shalom, shalom, divine prospect. You know what? Shakka, I'm telling you, okay? I'm telling you. Woo, hold on. Can you see it? There you go. That's that book itself, Codex Game Over. Listen, everybody else out there as well, I told you, my very first 1,000 subscribers, we want to reward you. Everybody who's actually going to subscribe within this week period, we're going to give you some exclusives. When it comes to the debate, I'm going to give you some live footage. Okay, so that's only going to go out to my first 1,000 subscribers and those who subscribe within this week. Okay, we're going to give you some exclusive footage. We're going to give you exclusive footage from our Titans, and we're going to give you some exclusive footage of things that we want to develop in the future for our audience members. So just hit me up. Hashtag Team Titans, let me know that you want to be in that mailing list, and we'll get that out to you. All right. We've actually kind of reached the end of this section. I actually want to ask Shakka a few more questions, like a question or two on homosexuality. He's a question of homosexuality. That's why I actually want to ask him. But I'm going to stop. I'm going to pause myself before I do ask him that question. And I'm going to open up to our audience members to ask our Saber, our Senator Shakka Ahmose some questions, okay? This is what I'm going to do. So if you're in YouTube land, just type away, give me the questions now, and I'll get them read out to you. Our audience panel, just let me know that you want to speak. Type a number down below. Let us know that you want to speak, and I'll open up your mic as well. Okay. And again, as I said, this is a family-friendly show, so I want you to, I want to get some messages out there to the mothers who are listening in to the show, the fathers who are listening in to the show, because this isn't really about us. This isn't really about us at all. This is about our legacy. This is about our children, the future. Okay, this is about the future, our children. So we want to give back to our community and give some advice to our mothers and fathers out there, and even to the children that are listening right now, how to keep your heads up. I've got on the Facebook, they're telling me, you know what, we're sitting right now in front of the TV with our family members. My little son or a family member is saying, oh, mommy, you know, he looks like Ramesses. He looks like Ramesses. And he's talking about you, Shakka Ahmose. And then somebody else is saying that, you know what, Kalam is kind of cute, you know, with big smiley cheeks. But I'm not going to get a big head. So I'm going to open up to our sister, our center, our beautiful center, our Nubian empress, Necha Ma'at. So Necha Ma'at, please unmute your mic and we can open it up to you to ask some questions or give commentary.
Dua'u.
Dua'u.
I actually wanted to refer back to something that you were saying, Brother Ahmose. At the beginning, you were speaking of the Zulu. Actually, you brought that up briefly, and the reason why I'm actually bringing that up is for the simple fact that it's with the culture. And why I think it's such a debate going on right now, and just generally, is that everybody seems to think that it's something that needs to be revived, and it's not something that's actually traditional, that's still actually happening. Because I know a lot, I've actually even had a lot of people come to me and ask me about, so where is the people from Kemet now? Like once it was like invaded, you know, with foreigners and everything like that. So where is it today? But again, and going back to what you had said about the Zulu, I'm not sure if you got to study it in depth. Okay, but you said something about the similarities of the neck piece. Have you had a chance to actually go a little deeper into that? Into their traditional culture?
Have I had a chance to go into the traditional culture?
Yeah, to learn a little bit more.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I was saying to learn a little bit more about it.
Yes, first I want to say hotep to you and Dua for spending time with us. I'm grateful for your presence, and I'm grateful for your presence, for your direction, and for your question. The literature on the Zulu coming from the north, it's very obscure and it's rare, but it exists. I know because I've seen it innumerable times. And each time I saw it, I made a mental note of it. I did not take the time to call the documentation because I hadn't planned on speaking of it. And I'm quite sure that it would not be too difficult for me to locate it. Probably in one of Diop's work, such as Pre-Colonial Black Africa, or I'm pretty sure that would be that would be my starting place, or maybe even just some online stuff. However, in fact, knowing me, I could probably find it very quickly online. With respect to the culture, as I said, from my childhood, my mother began going to Africa very early, and so because of that, and not just that, I grew up in a very black world growing up from childhood, as far as schools, community undertakings, whether they be charter schools or whatever it was, but probably because my mother's second husband, his daughter was married and raising her children in Sierra Leone, West Africa, and that was from the time when I was 7, 8 years old. And so we'd have visitors from Sierra Leone, but we'd also would have visitors from South Africa as well. My mother started a school back in the 80s, and it's still going today. And I was the first student actually, and it's called Yelverton Academy. And in that school, some of the first students were actually young people from South Africa, and this is in the early 80s. This is, matter of fact, 1980 itself, 1980, 1981. And that was my first introduction to South Africa. At the time, apartheid was very strong. Black people were still pretty much slaves in South Africa then. It was nowhere near the end of apartheid or Mandela's orchestrated freedom. And so because of that, I myself was kind of raised in proximity to the South African struggle and to the culture. And because I was able to speak with young people who I had to go to school with who were from South Africa, I became very intimately aware of the culture at a very early age. So to speak about the Zulu or the Xhosa, or you call the Xhosa people, and as well as others, I am on a number of intimate levels, intimately familiar with the Zulu, with the Xhosa. In fact, there was a time when I only listened to South African music because I felt that they were the best. I no longer feel that way, but I felt that they were certainly the best. As far as the Zulus are concerned, well, I read Shaka's story, King Shaka, Shaka, son of Jitiswayo, no, son of it's been a long time, son of Zingana, Singagakona. So it would be Bayete Unkosi, Wenawezu, Shaka Singagakona. Yes, I have some familiarity with their first coalescence in the region when the different peoples were rather splintered. This would be 16th, 17th century South Africa. The people in that part, see, what people fail to realize is that Africa has an unusual history. In that, and I hope this is pertaining to your question, Goddess, Sinette. Africa has an unusual history. What many people fail to realize is that if you look at Africa's very early history with its migrations out of the Olduvai Gorge at the Homo sapien stage, all of the archaeological evidence says that man or woman, whatever you want, human beings, they went to what we call the southern tip of Africa first. And that's where much of the culture came into being, which is why if you read the book Temples by Michael Tellinger, it's a book that a lot of people reference these days. The people who are in the know, they reference it. They talk about finding many of the they talk about finding many things that are reminiscent of ancient Egypt in the archaeology of South Africa. The book is called Temples. I'm pretty sure it's called Temples by Michael Tellinger. But if you look up Michael Tellinger, he's very easy to find, Tellinger. His book, and it's not a cheap book, it's a pretty big coffee table sized book because it's filled with images, actual photographs of temples and archaeological sites where they have images of ankhs and Horus bird images in early Southern African strata. Strata would be certain levels of earth as you dig down deep. And so, and you're talking about whole kingdoms and cities buried that have this ancient Egyptian iconography in South Africa long before that culture heads back up north and ends up in the Nile Valley. And so, you know, it's always quite possible that perhaps the Zulu were never in the Nile Valley. Maybe they were. Maybe they are reminiscent of the people who were the progenitors of all of that. You know, maybe it began with them first and they were always in that region. But for the most part, if you look at the early history of South Africa, you'll find that it was not as heavily populated as other parts of Africa were, which is what made it so easy in the beginning for the Dutch to come in. You know, when the Dutch came in as they were trying to circumnavigate the continent, or they were trying to find a different route to India, I presume. As the Dutch were coming in, when they circumnavigated it and ended up at that at the Cape of Good Hope, it's not like they had to go to war with the people. You know, they came there. It was probably very sparsely populated, at least the region that they wanted for themselves, and which is what made it easy. It made it. It supposedly set up a concession stand there for other people coming behind them. And, you know, the people that they found there, it wasn't a monolithic thing going on there. And so there's a lot of history and literature that says that there was heavy migration from the central plains of Africa on down to the southern regions. And that's how the confrontation took place, because you had one group going in one direction, coming into contact with a group that was setting up shop there without invitation. And so, yeah, I have some intimate understanding of the Zulus, particularly of Shaka's father, particularly the story that surrounds him, and just general Zulu culture itself, and how it relates to the other peoples there, who they have to share that land with, and particularly with the politics that the Zulu have played within the past 100 years. So I do have some intimate knowledge of it. Yes.
Okay, okay, Duao. I appreciate that. Yeah, I thought to bring that up because for the fact of you said about the intellectual and spiritual, it being something that of course that needs to be focused on and addressed in the midst of us learning about culture, and then and just for our youth and the legacy, I think that's something that of course we need to build on is where now, like, because we keep going back to then, but also in the midst of us understanding then, but where are they now? And then also in the midst of me studying African spirituality, and also the Medu Neter, I've realized that the Dogon, if I use the reference of the Dogon priest of what's his name, Naba Irita Shemira. He says that today, in modern today, they actually speak the Medu Neter still, and that their lineage came from back in Kemet. So yeah, that was just a question that I wanted to ask you. I appreciate you answering that for me, and I'm gonna look into what you did speak to me about.
You're very welcome. I'd like to address something that you said that I didn't address. A lot of times I have to go on the structure of the question, and so in your question, in your general question, there was a slight question that was kind of obscured, and that question was, where are they now? And I presume you are talking about the people of ancient Kemet, correct? Correct.
Sorry, her mic. Yeah, her mic is muted at the moment. We apologize. Shakka, could we come back to that in just one moment? We literally got 10 more. We've got 10 more minutes left of the show, so I have to apologize. We have to just rush things up. If you're new to the show is on every single Wednesday. Every single Wednesday, our show is on. So just tune in, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, just hit the subscribe button. Where is it? Just up there, right there. Hit the subscribe button or subscribe down below. All right. Wow, we've got so many questions coming in. It's flooding through the internet. I'm apologizing, YouTube land. We could only take a certain amount of questions. We have a question by a brother called David Johnson. We may have to extend the show and open up another link and have a super extended show, but we're going to have to close this link down very shortly. So I have to apologize from the outset. Okay, so we've got David Johnson on here. Who is asking a question to you. He says, what do you want to happen after the debate and how?
Okay, that's a good question. What I want to happen after the debate is I want to be able to get back to my music videos. That's the first thing that I want. Because I just finished shooting 3 music videos back to back since November, and I'm only just now finishing up working on the first one. So, you know, there's a lot of requests for music from me, and people all over the world to me because they want to work with me with respect to the music. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to happening after the debate. What do I expect to happen? What would I like to see happen after the debate with respect to the outcome of the debate for the people in general? Well, that's kind of difficult to answer because, number one, I was not given, you see, you have to understand the House of Consciousness. It's not the most democratic platform in the world. And so I don't do well in that structure. So I was not asked what I thought the title should be. If someone were to ask me what I thought the title should be, I think that there would have been a much better debate. That's my only, there would have been a much more yielding debate where much more information could have been given from both sides. Because the questions are so narrow from the Hebrew Israelite community, to be quite honest, I'm gonna be honest with you. Because I have to be. I don't think that it's going to be what I don't think there's not going to be any outcome from it that is going to have great meaning, at least for myself. I'm participating in it because I was requested to do so. Number one, I'm not the person that said, hey, yeah, let's have this debate. I was requested and strongly requested to be a part of this debate. Had I had it my own way, and I've always been vocal about it, and I'm not shy about it, I would prefer to have had my own debate concerning issues and subject matters that I think are important. I can't even tell you what we're going to be arguing and debating about, or rather debating about in the debate. I do know that my book, Codex Game Over, yeah, this is the book that's causing a lot of people to lose sleep. I knew that it would cause, I wrote it to cause Christians problem. I keep saying since I came into this game that my beef has been against Christianity, not Hebrew Israelites or Muslims or anyone else. But it's like any other point of contention. If you put your religion in the way by a fake history or a false history or an appendaged history, be it fake or otherwise, or be it real or otherwise, if you do that, or manufactured would be the best term. If you do that, then I guess you, to some degree or another, are, I wouldn't call it collateral damage, but you certainly are going to get some of the flurry thrown in your direction. And so, you know, that's what it is. Yeah, absolutely. So with respect to what I would like to see come out of this debate would be better debates. That's what I would like to see come out of it. Better debates. Answer your question.
We've got 3 more minutes left now. Brother Panahisi, I know you have a question. Please fire away as fast as possible so we can close out the show.
Okay. Shalom, Hotep, Kedu, Islam.
What am I?
Well, I got a statement. It's kind of a question mixed with a statement. Me being a Hebrew, I don't have a problem with Kemet. I don't have a problem with Africans. I claim and I stand on my African square and my African continent, and I defend it against anybody who's attacking it, be it Kemet, the Moors, the Hebrews, whoever. So, and I think of Kemet as a great history, just like studying Rome is great history, just like studying U.S. history is great history. But I wanted to make this statement. We had Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, Elijah Muhammad. All of these guys use a black liberation theology. And their black liberation theology was centered on the major religions and the books of that day, of that time period. And a lot of these brothers were successful in doing this. My brother Shakka, could you please tell me what's the Kemetic liberation theology, and how can the knowledge of Kemet be applied to either create a black liberation theology, or is it already in the works and we just don't know about it?
Okay. Thank you for your question. Hotep to you. And that was Brother Panahisi, correct?
Yes, that's Panahisi from the Hebrew War Machine.
Well, I have the first comment on his name. We know that Nehisi is Nubia. So the fact that he had a Nubian moniker, I have to applaud him. The fact that he has the burden of being a Hebrew Israelite, he has my condolences. With respect to how or whether there is a black liberation theology affiliated with any Kemetic doctrine or any Kemetic worldview, I think that I will quote Malcolm, being that he brought up Malcolm. Brother Malcolm, Minister Malcolm, Father Malcolm, the great Father Malcolm. The great Father Malcolm X said, of all subjects, it is history that is most qualified to reward all research. Malcolm X said that. He said that for a reason. The reason he said that is because whatever it is that you are looking for, that you feel will liberate you. You know, when you're talking to someone like myself, I tend to be kind of analytical. So my first questions are usually, liberated from what? Because when you answer that question, until you answer that question, you're not gonna know what it is you need to be liberated from. And that's very important. But within the context of what Malcolm said as far as history is concerned, I'm going to read something to you very quickly, my brother. This is from a book called My Africa by W.E. Ward. He wrote this after living amongst the people of the Gold Coast and learning their ways for 16 years. This is what he said. It's a quote. He said, "The English and African attitudes to history are different. The Englishman is not interested in history. He prefers to forget it, to let bygone be bygones, and to let sleeping dogs lie. But the African takes his history very seriously, even more seriously than the Irishman. He must, because an important part of his religion is the cult of his ancestral spirits. Something more than reverence, perhaps not quite as much as worship." That's from My Africa by W.E. Ward. So I say that in respect to your question, Brother Panehisi, whatever it is that we feel we need to acquire to liberate ourselves from whatever it is that feel we need to be liberated from, because I personally believe that our liberation is required on so many levels that it's not going to take just one thing to liberate us. With respect to a liberation theology in the Kemetic worldview, I personally believe that just going back to your history, in that history lies your liberation theology. If it is the God Ahmose teaching you how to get rid of the foreigners from amongst your midst, get them out of your minds, out of your pockets, out of your beds. If it is Tutmos the Fourth or Dahutmos the Fourth, the God Dahutmos the Fourth is used in theological terms. If it is the deity Dahutmos the Fourth chasing the Hyksos further into Asia and decimating them even more so, to show you how to treat an adversary, how to subjugate an adversary thoroughly and completely, then therein lies your liberation theology. It's in your history. But it doesn't have to be ancient Kemet. It can be any period of Africa. It could be the Mau Mau. You know, what's my liberation theology if I say let's take it back to Kenya, underneath the auspices of British colonial rule, when they came up with the Mau Mau, when Dedan Kimathi and others did what they had to do to eject the foreigners. Bless his name, Dedan Kimathi. So, you know, I personally think it's almost an oxymoron, the term liberation and theology, because when you're dealing with theology, the theology is what? The study of God. And so, if you have a liberation theology, then the only thing that you're going to free through studying God is your ka, your spirit. However, I would have to speak to the vice regent of the Nile Valley movement, Muntu. If you truly study God, and if you truly understand God, then the only liberation theology that there can be for black people is truly sovereignty. You must become sovereign as a person, as an individual, and as a group, as a people. So if you were to ask me wherein lies the true liberation theology, that's where it lies. It lies in becoming sovereign. And that means divorcing yourself from all of the agencies that are plugged into you, because it feeds off of you. And until you unplug yourself, all the history in the world and all the knowledge in the world isn't going to do anything. You have to unplug yourself and be able to defend yourself within legitimate or illegitimate context. But until you make those things a priority, there is no other liberation theology of which to speak. And I don't think that that's endemic to Kemet. That's not endemic to the Hebrew Israelites, to the Muslims, to the Moors, or anybody else. I think that is for all people. There are certain things that are peculiar only to Kemet. Then there are certain things that apply not only to Kemet, but to everyone. To everyone. You have white people who are still trying to get free from other white people. Look at the Ukraine. Russia just went in there and tried to take it over and do all of this stuff, right? So what are these white people in the Ukraine fighting for? For their own sovereignty. And they're not trying to get it from black people or red people or Asian people that are oppressing them. They're trying to get it from their own white people. So just as you have blacks in Africa who would desperately seek their own sovereignty from their own black people. So a lot of times these things don't have anything to do with color. It just has to do with cultural aggression, what's the word I'm looking for? Geopolitics, so forth and so on. So that's the answer to your question, Panahiti.
Thank you, our brother Shakka Ahmose. You know what? We have literally reached the end of this show. We've reached the end of this show, and I have to cut off this link right now. I'm going to thank all our guests for coming in. We've got a special surprise for everybody, or should I say a special reward for everybody. Although we're cutting off this link right now, if you are part of the 1,000 subscribers that are subscribing right now, I'm going to share the link with you, the extended link with you, so you can literally listen in to what's going on. You can call in to hear what's going on as well. So, with that being said, if you are part of the 1,000 subscribers, if you're part of the 1,000 subscribers, look down below. There will be a link sent and shared to you and you alone to watch the extended version of Shakka Ahmose, revealed and exposed to the world to know the man behind the screen. So I'm going to thank everybody again, thank our guests, thank our audience, and thank our Titan for being so formidable and sticking in with us. So I have been Kalam L, and this has been Talk with the Titans, signing out. Peace and love.